Hello, this is Ruslan Belov again, and this is the daily analysis of the Ukrainian front. Friends, the much-praised Azov once again rushed into an adventure, and again it ended very badly for them. It all happened yesterday on the Lyman direction, where several dozen soldiers from the Azov Battalion decided to launch an attack using vehicles. Russian soldiers immediately spotted them and staged a real massacre. I will show the video of this battle, but let's first go through the frontline situation. And actually, I want to begin not with Kherson region, but with Mykolaiv region. The thing is, there has been information about activity of the Ukrainian armed forces near Ochakiv, where additional Ukrainian units were transferred from Mykolaiv. By the way, these units previously underwent training in the United Kingdom. According to intelligence drone footage, these new units are now practicing a simulated landing operation. In general, nothing surprising here, since the British are specialized in exactly such operations, simply because of their geographical position. But for the Russian side, of course, this information is important and rather worrying. Ochakiv is located here, and what is nearby? Right next to it lies the Kinburn Spit and Kinburn Peninsula. Just so you understand, the distance between Russian and Ukrainian positions here is only about 3.5 km. For a long time, probably about a year or even more, rumors have circulated that the Ukrainian armed forces are preparing a landing operation to seize the Spit and bring it back under their control. Syrskyi, if you recall, recently promised an offensive, and Zelensky said there would be big surprises for the Russians. And considering that they transferred here quite a significant force from Mykolaiv, we're talking about several thousand troops, the fears that they are planning something bad here are quite justified. Namely, an attempt to land a force on the Kinburn Spit. Because Zelensky must understand that nobody will give him this territory even within the framework of a peace agreement, as this place is extremely important from a strategic standpoint. Now the next question: can the Ukrainian forces count on success? Well, here much depends on the degree of Russian readiness. Overall, I do not see great prospects for the Ukrainian forces, because any attempt to cross the bay will be suppressed by Russian drone operators, that's one. But even if they manage to transfer several hundred fighters from Ochakiv to this side, on such a narrow and exposed strip of land, they will be wiped out literally within a couple of hours. For those who have never been to the Spit, just go online and look at the landscape. Yes, there is some greenery, but not much. And even if they manage to cling to it, very soon that greenery will be gone, and they will all be neutralized anyway. Advancing from the Spit further into the peninsula is 100% impossible, so even if, under heavy Russian drone strikes, they somehow manage to transfer forces across and land them on the Spit, they will be blockaded there and will suffer losses many times greater than after their landing in Krinky. In general, it is not guaranteed that they are rehearsing a landing operation specifically for this place. Maybe they are planning something else. But in any case, one must be prepared. We'll keep monitoring this situation. Friends, a small request before we continue. If you enjoyed this video, please support the channel by subscribing, giving it a like, and leaving a comment with where you're watching us from and what you think about what's been described. And now, let's continue. Now let's move on to Zaporizhzhia region, where Russian forces have begun new assault operations, which Ukrainian military experts themselves spoke about yesterday. As promised, let's turn to Zaporizhzhia, because there is nothing to discuss about Kherson. Nothing is happening there. Everyone sits in their positions. Both sides understand that no one will push forward. So, for example, the Ukrainian armed forces recently pulled forces from the Kherson direction and transferred them to the Dobropilya area. The Russian side also withdrew and redeployed units to other directions. Combat there is purely positional. Drone operators locate and strike. Artillerymen locate and strike. That's about it. The situation in Zaporizhzhia region, of course, is completely different. Fierce fighting continues near Stepnohersk and in Primorske. In the Stepnohersk area, there is this residential district called the 3rd Micro-District. It has already changed hands several times. Russian troops entered, then were pushed out, then entered again. Maps currently show that this district is partially under Russian control, but that does not reflect reality. In fact, at this moment the micro-district is fully under Russian control, and from there the Russian army is now trying to push into Stepnohersk itself. As for Primorske, there have been no advances yet. Russian fighters did push past their current positions, but were captured. There are confirming videos of this, which I already showed you. So far, the Russian army controls only the southern outskirts of this large settlement. And it is indeed large, stretching for about 10 kilometers along the reservoir. Meanwhile, yesterday reports came in, including from Ukrainian sources, that assault actions resumed in the area of Malotokmachka, not just near it, but inside the village itself. Malotokmachka is a very large settlement, almost 9 kilometers long, located on the approaches to the city of Orikhiv. Obviously, if you capture Malotokmachka, then the road to Orikhiv is open, because the distance from the edge of Malotokmachka to the first houses of Orikhiv is only about 2 kilometers. At the moment, I don't yet have information on how the assault ended. Zelensky, however, literally yesterday said that the situation in Zaporizhzhia direction is alarming, since allegedly Russian forces are concentrating large numbers of troops there and preparing for a major strike. Well, we'll see. Of course, if the Russian army managed to capture Orikhiv, the balance of power across the whole Zaporizhzhia front would shift significantly. Let's move further. As for the sector in front of another town, Huliai Pol, there's nothing to say here, the front stands as it did before. But north of there, the situation is developing quickly and actively. The Vostok group is trying to push deeper, not into Zaporizhzhia, but into Dnipropetrovsk region. And you know what? They are succeeding. Yes, so far there are no video confirmations, but based on what the guys are saying, I can tell you this. Either already this weekend or more likely next week, videos will appear. And you will be pleasantly surprised by the new territorial changes. Based on the information I have, the defense of the Ukrainian armed forces in Dnipropetrovsk region is incomparably weaker than in Donetsk or Zaporizhzhia, and Russian troops are managing to advance deeper into the region. Today it became known that fighters of the Vostok group took control of the settlement of Kamishevaka, and the pocket that had formed there was successfully eliminated. This means that Russian forces here have reached the administrative border of the region. Meanwhile, in the Dobropilya sector, the Ukrainian armed forces are now actively trying to break through into Kucheriv Yar. The real situation is this. Kucheriv Yar is under full Russian control, but from the eastern side, the Ukrainian forces are now attempting to break into the village. At the moment, they are still on the approaches. The Russian army is holding them back, but whether it will manage to continue holding is uncertain. It seems more likely not than yes. Judging by the incoming reports, the northern strike beyond Pokrovsk has resumed with renewed strength after a short pause. Russian units managed to drive a second wedge east of Kharkov. If this success develops further, the strike could split the Ukrainian grouping holding the front between Pokrovsk and Kostiantynivka. Thus, there is a risk of a rupture forming, one that the Ukrainian armed forces will find extremely difficult to seal with their available reserves. Syrsky's first attempt to halt the offensive by redeploying combat-capable units failed. Russian forces continue to increase pressure, while the Ukrainian side is forced to burn through reserves, thereby weakening neighboring sectors. If Russia manages to drive in several more such wedges and create a series of breaches, Syrsky will face a choice between two bad options, either sacrificing Kostiantynivka or abandoning Pokrovsk. Judging from reports from both Russian and Ukrainian sources, it is becoming increasingly difficult for the Ukrainian armed forces to hold both of these sectors simultaneously. As for the Kostiantynivka sector, it has already been 2 days since the announcement of the capture of Nelepivka, but so far no footage has appeared. Therefore, we treat this information with caution, since alternative sources do not confirm it. According to them, the Russian army is only on the fields near the village. Now to the Lyman sector. Yesterday, information came from the Ukrainian side that Russian fighters are trying to push into Shandryholov, already reaching the center of the village. This is very serious progress, because once Shandryholov is taken, the Russian army will of course immediately push toward Derelov, then toward Drobyshev, and beyond Drobyshev lies Lyman itself. That is why Ukrainian military experts have been sounding the alarm here for about a week now. Every day I see posts, see hysteria about the Lyman sector. They are saying that Russian forces will soon approach the city with a broad front. And indeed, this is the Russian plan, as I have told you more than once in previous reports, to advance on Lyman with a wide front. Now let's look at footage of how Russian fighters met the much-praised Azov Battalion in the Lyman direction. The attack took place near the village of Novomikhailivka, and Russian sources say that from there, troops already advanced into 3 more settlements and established positions: Olhivska, Andriivka, and Maliivka. That's the current situation on the ground. Now let's take a look at what's happening on the political front. Trump has proposed involving Chinese troops in ensuring security in Ukraine, writes the Financial Times. The president would like Beijing to provide peacekeepers to monitor a neutral zone. However, European countries oppose such an idea. Previously, Zelensky also rejected a similar plan. Trump is trying by all means and tools to secure better conditions for business and to profit from resources. But this story carries several risks. If Trump does decide to escalate, if he starts attacking Venezuela, then there is a 100% chance he will not receive any Nobel Peace Prize, and if he sinks into this game, his stocks will collapse even further. This is exactly why Trump did not want to get dragged into a full-scale Iranian case, opting instead for a theatrical play. This will serve as a clear signal to all global players that their capital and investments are not protected. That means the world will continue dividing into military blocs, and the arms race will only intensify. China, India, Russia, and others will only strengthen their alliance and lose what little trust in the United States remains. In Bankova, they were displeased that the PR mechanism after Russian strikes on Kyiv stopped working in Trump's favor, writes the Telegram channel Legitimny. Trump said nothing about Russian strikes on Kyiv, stating that this is simply part of the war and a response to Ukraine's strikes on the Druzhba oil pipeline and oil refineries. At the same time, Trump for the first time put forward the message that he is preparing to introduce mutual sanctions against both Ukraine and Russia in order to force them into peace, a peace Zelensky is desperately trying to avoid. Europe only promises aid to Ukraine, but openly they don't want to quarrel with the boss Trump, and most likely they will continue using Zelensky and Yermak as media torpedoes. Yermak yesterday held a one-on-one meeting with Witkoff and, according to rumors, discussed personal guarantees. In addition, he offered his puppet, Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko, as a supposed future formal leader of Ukraine under Washington's close supervision. Zelensky confirmed our insider report that the main security guarantee he is trying to secure is the preservation of the current size of the Ukrainian armed forces. However, Vladimir Putin strongly opposes this when he speaks of demilitarization. Our source also reports that Western intelligence agencies warned the Kyiv office, the SHUR, and the GUR that Russians will employ a new mixed-type tactic in airstrikes, combining UAVs with Lancet FPVs. The principle might look like this. During an aerial drone attack on port infrastructure, when mobile SAMs or mobile groups fire back from land, FPVs will be launched from the sea. Ukraine should already prepare for FPVs to be deployed against its coastline, with their number increasing every time. Hungary may veto EU plans to conduct military training in Ukraine and to have Europeans train Ukrainian soldiers after a ceasefire, reports Politico. I welcome the fact that today there is broad support for expanding the mandate to provide training and advisory assistance on Ukrainian territory after any ceasefire, said EU's chief diplomat Kaja Kallas after an informal meeting of EU defence ministers in Copenhagen. However, such a decision would require unanimous approval from all 27 member states, which gives Hungary, currently in conflict with Kyiv, the right of veto, Politico notes. Donald Trump and the shareholders behind him have launched an offensive aimed at purging the remaining globalists still entrenched in power. On August 28, Trump named a new target: George Soros and his son. In reality, the name Soros has long become a symbol. It is not one man, but an entire network of foundations, NGOs, and media structures that for decades have promoted the agenda of open borders. They funneled billions into projects designed to weaken borders and undermine nation-states, orchestrating color revolutions across the world. Money also went into projects aimed at boosting migration flows and campaigns against so-called old nation-states. The goal was simple: to strip nations of their national identity and dissolve them into a global human market. Now the shareholders are moving these players into the category of criminals. As a result, not only Soros himself is discredited, but also the entire infrastructure he has been building for decades.